Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, the radio show all about traveling like a boss by being your own boss. Stay tuned for weekly interviews featuring guests that have built their own online businesses. If you would like to have access to our entire back catalog, visit travellikeabosspodcast.com for instant access. And here's your host, Johnny FD.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Johnny, and welcome to episode 122 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I am here with my new business partner and co-host of my new podcast, Sam Marks.
Hey, everybody, and congratulations on that many episodes. It's insane, and I can't wait to get there on our new podcast.
Oh, man, I'm so freaking excited. So if you guys don't know who Sam Marks is, he's been on the podcast before. Do you happen to remember what episode it was?
I don't. It was a lot of fun, though. We were drinking whiskey and talking about money, so...
I like it. So Sam Marks, he sold his business for $100 million, talked about it at the Nomad Summit, and I invited him on the podcast to kind of share his experience about traveling and life and kind of what he's doing afterwards with it. And it turns out a big part of his day now is figuring out ways to invest his money and grow the money. So if you guys want to listen to that episode, it was 105. And in there, you can actually see the video of his Nomad Summit talk completely for free. And I learned a ton from it, and I think other people will as well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And Johnny, I just thank you for all of your inspiration. I've learned a ton from you as well. And I'm glad we were able to put our heads together on collaborating on this new podcast, because the first time I think we ever talked, we were talking about investing in one form or another. I believe you were asking me questions about my property investments in Chiang Mai, and I was asking you about your peer-to-peer lending investments on Lending Club, and it just dawned on us, like, why are there not more people talking about all these modern ways to invest and getting insight on real returns and strategies? So it's been great to do it on a personal level, and then turn it into a podcast has been really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I'm so glad we're doing the podcast together. If you guys have not listened to it yet, it is Invest Like a Boss. You can find that on wherever you listen to this podcast now, or you can just check out investlikeaboss.com. So can you kind of just give people a quick overview of the type of things that we talk about on that show, what some of the episodes have been about?
Yeah, so what are we in? About 11 episodes, and the podcast is very much a discovery of investing for the two of us. So we're both investing in a lot of new things, and we're discovering all these new modern platforms of how to make money. We're living in an environment, in a world of basically zero interest rates. So if you put money in a bank, you make zero. And between the two of us, we have, I don't know, maybe 50 different investments that we have figured out we've been exploring by ourselves. So we're learning. It's not that we're financial advisors. It's not that we're necessarily offering direct investment advice. It's very much a discovery of investing in our mutual journeys and becoming entrepreneurs turned investors, and exploring the real returns of what's happening. It's not always positive. A lot of times it's negative, but we're going into detail and sharing results from our investment journeys. And now where we're at, after we're at episode about 10, is now we're getting to the point where we can actually interview CEOs of big companies like Peerstreet, Fundrise, and interview people that have had successful investment journeys, and dissect and kind of reconfigure how they've done it and present it to the audience.
I love it. And I think the people listening to this show right now are thinking, okay, well, I'm traveling, I'm focusing on building my business, from zero. Maybe I don't have the money to invest yet. Why should I listen to the show? I think it's one of those things where first, it really is geared more towards people that have already been successful with their business. So you're already bringing in extra income. Maybe you're bootstrapping in Chiang Mai, but you're making, $3 or $4 a month, and you have extra income, and you're thinking, should I just keep it in a savings account, or is there something I can do with this extra income to start growing my future? Or there's a lot of people who, they no longer work for a corporate job or a big company, so you don't have the retirement benefits. There's no pension that you're working towards, and you're thinking, okay, I'm making pretty good money now. I can travel the world, traveling like a boss, enjoy myself. But what am I going to do one day if I have, if I want to retire, if I want to buy a house? What can I do? What can I do? And I think these are great platforms that we talk about in depth every single week. And, honestly, it's kind of just fun. It's fun, picking the brains of people who are good with money, who are wealthy. Even in these 10 episodes, we already had a couple millionaires on the show. And that's one of those things where I never had access to, up until very recently, is being able to hang out with people more successful than me, especially financially successful, and figure out what is their mindset, how do they think, what are some of the things they do that I can apply to my own life.
Well, multimillionaires and CEOs, and I think the coolest part of our podcast is being able to, because we have the platform now, being able to reach these high-level CEOs of big investment firms and having them say it as it is, and being able to sit there and ask them all the questions that millions of people want to be able to ask them, and being able to share that with our audience. And a lot of what we do, going into the fun aspect of the podcast, is it's very much experiential, right? You and I are making investments in new modern platforms just for the experience. I don't want to invest in Lending Club per se, but I'm doing it because you've done it and I want that experience. Places like Fundrise, we just had Ben Miller, the CEO, on the show, and you can invest in that e-REIT, that platform, for as little as $1,000. So a lot of the things that we're actually talking about, and the people that we're having on the show, and the platforms that we're discussing and experimenting on, you can invest in these things for like $100 or less. So it's very much our own journey, and a lot of it, like you said, it's fun. It's an experiment to learn. The whole investing category is changing so rapidly with the advent of the internet and digital technologies that who knows where it's going to go, but we're definitely exploring all the different avenues.
Yeah. And so for every episode, I think we're going to miss it on the main channel for this one, but we always mention what we are currently drinking for the day. So Sam, what is in front of you?
I didn't even know I was going to be caught off guard, but luckily I have a bottle of Chilean. This is Malbec. Yeah, Malbec. This is a Chilean Malbec. Chile's not actually known for the Malbecs. It's more Argentina, but this is a Chilean Malbec from View Manent, and I'm enjoying it. How about you, Johnny?
I like it. So in the fridge right next to me, I have some German beer because I am in Berlin, Germany right now. This is Bill Burger, but I'm actually sipping on lemon water because it is 11. No, sorry. It's like 1 in the afternoon. But it is my birthday today, so I will be having some drinks.
No excuses, play like a champion. Rule number 32.
I like it. So, okay,
happy
real
birthday,
quick,
buddy.
I appreciate that, man. And you know what? For everyone kind of listening to the show that you guys been following for years now, it wouldn't be possible without all the listeners. So thank you guys so much for being subscribed, for telling your friends about it, for leaving the reviews on iTunes, and for helping this show grow. We are 121 episodes in or something. It's insane. Like I mean, it's one of those things where this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing this more than even building my own businesses. I think I even enjoy experimenting with investing and talking about it, and more than I do the actual money making aspects of it. So the new Invest Like a Boss podcast, it's a pleasure for me. It's not it's not even work. It really is a pleasure.
Yeah, definitely echo that. It's been a lot of fun. We're only through 11 episodes, but each one gets better and better, and the people that we're able to reach grows. And I think we're just getting better at interviewing really smart people, which is making us better investors, and in turn making our listeners more educated.
Okay, so what we're going to do real quick is we're just going to pull up investlikeaboss.com, and we're going to quickly give you a 1-minute synopsis. Actually, let's do a 20-second synopsis of each episode just so people know what it's about and what they're kind of missing out on by not listening to it. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Episode 1 is Sam Mark's personal introduction. So in this episode, you basically talked about, I think briefly, about how you made your multi-millions in a big exit from your company, but more importantly, where you are putting that money now. So you kind of go over all the different mediums where you have your money, and you get pretty honest, and you're like, okay, I have this percentage kind of in here. This one is just kind of experimental, just for fun. Here's where I put the majority of my money. I think it's a really good episode for people to kind of think about what would you do if you had 10 tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, that was a good episode. And there was also an introduction to the podcast. So that was a lot of fun and really a kickoff of what we were intending to do and are doing. So what was number 2, Johnny? That was with you, right?
So in episode 2, this is where I talk about what I did with the $60,000 payout I got from selling my dropshipping store, as well as where I personally invest my money, not just with that, but also some profits from running the store, running all my other online businesses. So the best way to make money is with your money. So this is, Johnny FD 2.0.
Loved it. So that kind of covered the first 2. That covered us personally and what we're doing as investors. And I'll tell you one thing, that was the first 2 episodes. We're on episode 11 now, and I know both of our investment portfolios have expanded pretty considerably since then. And so the next episodes go into those, and it's been a lot of fun. So episode number 3 was with Brian Jimerson. He's our buddy, and he's a Forex trader, a professional Forex trader, lives in Bangkok. And that was episode, I would say arguably that was probably the most fun episode we had. We went to Bangkok. We sat down with him in his plush penthouse apartment. We killed a bottle of whiskey, and we talked about how Brian is beating basically every other Forex trader that I've ever heard of. I have an account with him. He returned 32% on it last year. Johnny, you just started an account with him, correct?
Yep, I did. So I'll explain it in the episode. At the time of the recording, that was the first time I met Brian, and I had not invested yet. I had there was no thought in my mind to invest Forex because it's super volatile. It's super high risk. But after meeting him and kind of hearing what he's like and how hard he works, I was like, you know what? I'm investing in this guy. I'm investing in Brian, not investing in Forex anymore. Yeah. So definitely listen to this episode. It was super fun, especially after polishing the bottle of Johnny Walker Platinum. And then in episode 4, we go the direct opposite, and we're like, okay, that was the super high risk, high reward. Let's go super safe. So what did you talk with Stan about in episode 4?
So Stan's an annuity dealer. Annuities is basically a contractual guarantee for a return. They run through insurance programs. They're really boring. They're super safe. They're safer than having your money in banks. And what Stan specializes in is basically giving people confidence in their principal, right? You're not going to get rich off annuities, but you're people that are working hard and really maybe concerned about putting money in the stock market, or just want to go to sleep easy at night and know they're going to have a little bit of income, but their money's going to be safe. That's what annuities are. I have significant amount of my net worth in annuities for that exact reason. I've never thought about them or questioned them in the 3 years I've had them. They're never on my mind. It's never a stress. I know I'm making 2% or 3% every single year on them. And I tend to have those for pretty much the rest of my life through retirement. That's kind of like the anchor and confidence building staple in my portfolio, I'd say.
I like it. Episode 5, I get on the phone with Dave Steiner, who is getting ready to retire. He's super into investing. He gives me some advice on SEP IRAs, which are basically retirement funds. And on episode 6, we have on Dan Norris, which is Sam's buddy, who just started in Brewery.
Yeah, and so we did the episode, recorded the episode, and then the next week they open. They're absolutely smashing it down in the Gold Coast of Australia. It's a very fun episode on how to invest in yourself. Dan is very much an entrepreneur that continues to take all the money he makes and reinvest it in himself, his own projects, his own initiatives. Doesn't mess with the stock market, doesn't mess with property. He just goes back into his own project. So it's a really inspiring episode. And then episode 7, we have Kevin Shea on. Kevin's built the biggest self-storage company in Hong Kong. That's 64 different locations in Hong Kong. It's a massive business, huge cash flows. We talk about how he built the business, how he uses leverage to continue to grow it, and for everyone else who doesn't want to build out their own self-storage facility and manage thousands of different individual customers, we talk about REITs. And REITs is a topic that we continue to speak more and more about. It's basically investing in property without the headaches, or let's say investing in cash flowing, yielding dividend producing real estate without the headaches of being a landlord. So we get into that and we talk about different REIT funds that you can invest in the public markets that will produce income.
With episode 8, I really enjoyed it because Sam brought on his personal accountant. So he was able to kind of dive in deep with the numbers, kind of figure out how to structure, different types of investments that are not, just stocks and bonds, things that, it kind of really showing that everything's possible, whether you want to invest in other countries, systems, or you want to invest in something that's kind of like totally off market. Everything is possible if you find the right help. And I think he really gave a good insight on what you're doing with your portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And another good thing about episode 8 is it goes into a little bit of detail about peer-to-peer lending and our new accounts. So this was one of the new accounts that we set up because of this podcast as an experiment, and that was with Peerstreet. And actually, happy to say that we're going to have the Peerstreet CEO on the show coming up in the next couple of weeks. But this was very much a look into, okay, we have this podcast operating. Let's go ahead and experiment with some new platforms, put our money where our mouth is. So we do a deep dive into the new account that we set up with them and our strategy behind funding that account. And then episode 9, we have the update with Johnny I, which was really a lot of fun. We hadn't talked in maybe 6 weeks. So we talk about some of these new investments that we've made. Johnny, you invested with Brian, as you already mentioned. I opened a Peerstreet and Lending Club account. And then we do a deep dive into the performance of some of our other accounts like Vanguard and Wealthfront.
Yeah, exactly. And I think these updates are going to be one of the most valuable parts of this podcast, this journey, because right now, stocks are pretty flat, but if they start going up or they start, or it crashes, these are going to be kind of real life updates, monthly updates or quarterly updates on what we're doing with our own personal money. So I think people are really going to enjoy that. They're going to learn a lot, especially because it kind of shows the two sides. It's going to show the side for someone who has a lot of money to invest, millions of dollars, as well as someone who kind of went from zero to having a couple $1,000s and now has a smaller amount of money to invest, and how people getting started with their business can realistically, grow and become millionaires themselves.
I already know we have some fantastic episodes ahead that I'm so excited to release. We won't say the names of those people yet, but they are getting better and better and more impactful. But episode 10, we have Joe Magnati on there with his company Empire Flippers. This was a really exciting episode for us to record because Joe owns a marketplace via Empire Flippers that sells thousands and thousands of profitable cash flowing businesses, or let's say cash flowing websites. Because of that, he has an absolute insider look at so many different trends that are happening online, what type of businesses are making money, where there's money to be made. I really, really envy him for what he has access to and the type of businesses that he gets insider information to. So we really dissect that and go into detail on how you can make money by either selling a business like Johnny recently did online, or acquiring a profitable cash flow business that you can take over and grow yourself.
Exactly. And in this week's episode, instead of us just kind of talking back and forth about what these episodes are about, we wanted to actually play you this latest episode. This would be Invest Like a Boss podcast, episode 11, but we're just going to attach it here on Travel Like a Boss since you already subscribed. If you like this episode or you want to hear more like it, or you want to hear any of the episodes that we just mentioned earlier, definitely subscribe to Invest Like a Boss as well, because this is the only time we're going to be sharing a full episode on the Travel Like a Boss channel. But this is a really interesting episode because it's basically, Sam and I are going to talk about what we would have done differently when we were, between 17 and 24. So like right during the college years and right after college, about money, about debt, about finance, about, buying houses or getting your first credit card, if you should go to college or not, what books you should read, and how people can kind of get started with a very good, I would say like a foundation for money and finance.
Yeah, and I would say it's not necessarily limited to 17 to 24-year-olds. It could really apply to anyone who is taking that next step into financial freedom. So I wouldn't cap it necessarily by age demographic, but if you're looking to learn more about investing in financial freedom and take those next steps, I would definitely give it a listen.
So enjoy the episode, everyone. Welcome to the Invest Like a Boss podcast.
I'm Sam Marks.
And I'm Johnny FD. We're self-made entrepreneurs who invest our own money and use modern technology to invest like a boss.
Join us each week for exclusive interviews with our network of modern investors, business owners, and multimillionaires to discover new ways to invest our hard-earned cash.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Johnny, and welcome to episode 11 of the Invest Like a Boss podcast. I'm back here with Sam Marks. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. Glad to be back on with you.
Yeah, it's fun. And today, the topic is going to be advice for... I was gonna make it 18 to 24 year olds, but I actually think we should even start before that. So people who even before they can legally start investing or dealing with money, even when they're 17, I think there's a lot of things that they can read and can educate themselves on and start doing. So let's actually make this episode advice for 17 to 24 year olds.
I like it.
Yeah. And so the reason why we kind of cut it off at 24, I mean, obviously you'll still benefit from this if you're, 26 or even 36. It's more kind of like, this is the advice that I wish that I knew, or somebody, I had an older brother, or, if my dad knew about finance. These are things I wish I knew when I was going through college and afterwards. Because, I've made a lot of financial mistakes, and I'm sure you have as well.
I've made more than I can count. And a lot of this was been through trial and error, and some of the failures are kind of necessary to learn how to position yourself better for the future. Just like they always say in business, your failures count for your experience and your future. So it's been good, but if you can minimize those, then all the better.
Makes sense. And, a lot of it is, how our parents dealt with money. So I'm curious, your parents, were they financially savvy? Did they teach you, tips and tricks? Like how are they with money?
I grew up very middle, lower class in the USA. And in that category, my family's spending was very conservative. So I had, say, very average clothes. Like I got new clothes from Gap maybe once a year. Sports equipment, I never had new sports equipment. Cars, we always rented, we rented Honda cars or Ford cars, nothing special. But my parents owned a small furniture store, and that allowed me to see the beauty of freedom and freedom of schedule. So we never had much money, but my parents would always have the freedom and flexibility to take time off work, to come to my baseball games, for us to take a 3-day family vacation by driving. So I always appreciated their flexibility, where most of my friends had more money than my family and had nicer things. Their parents were never at their baseball games or sporting events or doing vacations because they were always locked into work. So I learned lessons about money, more about the freedom of schedule, that I would say more in a business sense, and owning your own business, more the importance of that. And because I grew up in a conservative family with conservative spending, I learned the importance of saving.
Man, that's super valuable. I really wish that my parents kind of had that same same setup in life. They actually had a small business, a restaurant, for a while, but I was too young to kind of understand. I think they all I saw was the stress that they would have fighting with their partner, who till this day I think was probably like this insane woman, but who knows whose fault it was, right? Or maybe it was just about money, right, or whatever it was. But so I never really thought about it that way. And as far as money, my parents were always pretty poor. I mean, immigrant family, never made that much money, except for actually a few years when they were running this restaurant, and they all of a sudden had a bunch of money. But my dad was super conservative. He's super frugal even till today. He one of the arguments my parents have all the time is my dad will go out wearing, his old clothes that's comfortable, and my mom would get mad saying like, "Hey, you have all this new clothes. Why don't you wear it?" And it's one of those things where my dad, he's kind of over conservative with money. I think he's a little bit too frugal, a little bit too cheap. And my mom, she's the exact opposite, which is like, she likes to spend. And here's an example is, we used to always, buy the cheapest car possible. I remember, those Sunday ads you get, where you get like the one car that looks like it's ultra cheap, but it's just to get you into the showroom, and nobody actually buys it because there's no electric windows or locks. Well, my dad walked in. He's like, I want this car. And the guy was like, oh, well, I can show you that car. But, just to let you know, that one doesn't have anti-lock brakes. My dad's like, it's okay. I don't need it. And he's like, well, that one doesn't have air conditioning. And he's like, it's okay. He like, do it has windows? It's like, well, it doesn't even have electric windows. It has manual crank windows. And my dad was like, this is the car I want. My mom, on the flip side, during that time that they were doing well with their business, she got in an argument with my dad about money, about, because she wanted to spend more. And she stormed out, they had a big fight. She stormed out. She came back with a brand new sports car.
Jeez.
And just, out of the blue. And it was like, I was, like 14 at the time, so I didn't really understand what was happening. But for my financial knowledge, they never talked to me about money. They never really told me how much money they would earn or how much they would spend or expenses. It turns out we refinanced our house, 4 times, and I had no idea that they were doing that. So I never learned any of this stuff. And I think I got a little bit lucky because I happen to have really good credit today. Actually, I'm curious. Do you know what your credit score is?
I don't know. It's unflawed, I would say. I've never had any delinquent issues with my credit, but I don't ever check it because I never really take credit.
Yep, I'm the exact same way. I have no idea what the actual number is, but I think I'm gonna guess it's like 750. Something very, very high. Like I don't know how to get like a perfect credit score. I don't even know if that exists, but it's definitely high. But it was all completely by accident. It was kind of by luck because I never learned any of this stuff. So if somebody is getting ready to turn 18, right? So let's say someone's 17 still. What are some of the things that they can do? For me, I don't even know where I heard this. I just got lucky. Someone just mentioned it. They said to me, like, you should go out and get a secured credit card. Have you ever heard of that? Do you know what that is?
No.
It's so you can't actually have a credit card till you're 18, but when you're, I think, 16, you can go out to a bank and say, I want to put $250 into a savings account that I cannot touch, and please issue me a credit card so I can have a $250 limit. So for the bank, they have zero liability because you have the money in the bank. That's your limit, so you can't go over it. So there's zero chance for them to lose money. But what's good for you is two folds. One is you actually start building your credit history 2 years before everyone else. And then second, because it's secured and you have a low limit, the chances of you messing up, the liability of you messing up is very, very small.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's smart. Building credit is a good thing to do for anybody. Even if you never use it, it's a good thing to have. And I think one of the great things just about having a credit card is it teaches you to spend responsibly. And that is probably enough of a lesson to go out and get one, especially at an early age, because it requires you to be responsible and diligent in the way that you spend. And you have to go through banking and learn how to reconcile and check your expenses and even create reports in some cases. So I think it's a really smart idea to do young. I don't know. Did I have a credit card in college? I think I had a debit card only in college.
I remember my first credit card I ever got. I was 18. I was sitting at my community college in the classrooms, and you're bored, right? Because you don't want to listen to the teacher. And there was a pamphlet, like one of those paper brochures for a credit card, just in the room. They just kind of spanned it in the room, and I started reading it because I was so bored listening to whatever the actual class was. And I was reading. I was like, oh, okay, you know what? Yeah, let me sign up for this. So I filled it out and mailed it in, and I remember specifically they asked me, how much money are you earning? And I just checked the biggest box. I think I checked like 200, 1,000 plus. So my first credit card, I'm 18, I have no job, I have no income, and they give me like a $20,000 limit or something insane. Maybe it was 10,000, but it was something like, in my mind, I was like, there's no way I'd ever be able to pay this off if I spent this much.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good thing because then it made me really, really cautious about spending money on a card. So I used to spend something and then pay it off as soon as it posted. So I would like literally pay it off like 3 days later. And I think that was the best habit I got into. So instead of treating the money like actual credit, I just treated it like, like a 5-day IOU.
Yeah, smart stuff. Well, I think everyone needs to be very careful with credit, especially at an early age. I mean, the U.S. average savings rate is currently negative, which is very scary. It just means everyone's in debt But if you can learn to be responsible at a young age, then it'll pay dividends throughout your entire life. But I read a very interesting quote from none other than Warren Buffett last night that said, the number one way that smart people lose money is through debt and credit. So you have to be very, very careful, and especially when it comes to investing, using debt to invest. It can be a very dangerous game that can get you in a lot of trouble. But if you can learn at a young age to take credit via credit card and to spend wisely and scale into more credit and become more and more responsible, then I think it's a good thing, and you win just in the experience of learning.
I 100% agree with that. I also think it's a very dangerous, slippery slope, because I think most people are going to end up messing up. I think, leveraging credit to earn more money or make more money could definitely work. And that's how, very smart investors make a ton of money. Or even if people want to listen to episode 3, Invest Like a Boss with Brian Zimmerman, the reason why he makes so much money with Forex trading isn't because he's, investing, let's say, $10,000 and buying $10,000 worth of Forex. He's leveraging it, 10 to 1 or 100 to 1 or 300 to 1.
Yeah.
And that's how he, makes the big bucks. But at the same time, I think when someone is 18 to 24 and they haven't really gone through all the knowledge, it's really easy to end up losing more money than you can afford.
Yeah, we talk about it in episode 7 as well with Kevin Shea, and he goes on to mention that all the people that he know have made a lot of money in the real estate game have all done it through leverage. And I continue to be told that I should take on debt to make further investments and larger investments. And it's something I've always had kind of sitting there thinking I should do this if the right opportunity comes up. Because once you have money with, say, a big bank, like I have multiple millions of dollars with UBS, I can get a security-backed loan, which basically means as long as I keep my money in the account with them, they'll loan against it for very low rates, basically 2% or something extremely low. So it's very appealing to get money at 2%, but I've never done it because I'm just not comfortable with it. If rates go up, my interest rates go up, and then you have all this debt. What if the investment doesn't work out? So it's something that I'm still not comfortable with, and I've never done it. I'm always considering looking at it, but the only debt that I currently have now is credit card debt, which I continue to manage responsibly, and we'll continue to look at opportunities in the future. But for me, debt is quite a scary thing. But I know a lot of people that have made money with it.
Wait, when you say credit card debt, how much do you have on there, and how often do you pay it off?
Well, I run up on my business credit cards. I run up, probably $15,000 a month. On my personal credit card, maybe $5,000 a month. But then I just have it auto pay. So I set it up to auto pay from my checking accounts. So I never have to actually manually pay off the credit each month. It just pulls directly from my credit card, and I go in at the end of each month and just make sure everything looks good and do a little bit of accounting.
Okay, so do you have it auto paid to the minimum, a set amount, or the full amount?
No, the full amount. I've always paid it to the full amount because I think when you pay off to the minimum, that's when things start catching up and getting pretty ugly. If you're paying off only the minimum and you're rolling over the excess each month, then after 2 or 3 months, you could have a really big bill that caught up on you.
I'm so glad you said that, because when you said you had credit card debt, it made it sound like you were rolling over credit card debt. And I thought, this guy's insane. I'm not doing this podcast with him.
Right. Exactly. Well, we talked about peer-to-peer lending, right? And what I've come to realize with Lending Club, which is the biggest peer-to-peer lending platform, almost all of the people on there, and this is going to billions and billions and billions of dollars every year, all of this is consumer debt. The majority of it is credit card debt. So it just shows you, and people are getting loans off Lending Club for, say, 15% to pay off credit card debt with their banks at 22%. I mean, it's really scary, right?
You're just
so you
playing
never
this
want to
game.
get yourself in that.
Yeah. And you're playing a game that you'll never win. So I'm exactly in the same shoes as you. I've never, ever, ever missed a payment or carried credit card debt because I think it's insane. We would love to get 25% APR. But can you imagine that? If we can invest our money, if we get 25%, that's what credit card companies are taking from you, or sometimes even 30%. So if you wouldn't, it's it's unfathomable, for someone to give you 30% interest. Why would you pay someone 30% interest? It's just ridiculous.
It's sickening. Yeah.
So I think that should be a big lesson for everyone listening. One is start building your credit as soon as possible, but never ever carry balance, like for no reason. If you guys are
step
already
into it.
Yeah, if you guys are already in debt, that's a whole nother topic. I feel bad for you guys, and there are ways to solve it and get back on your feet. But I think it's for at least this episode. Maybe we can make that a future episode: how to get out of debt and how to kind of figure out your life if you've messed it up. But I'd rather focus on all the people who have not yet messed up, and and prevent that in the first place. I think that's a better use of our time right now.
Agree.
Okay, so before we get into all the other investment type things that people 18 to 24 should be using, do you remember what the first book or a resource, was it a class that you took in college or high school? Was it a book you read? Was it a course? What was the first introduction to money or finance?
I think the content of a book is very much timely, right? If you read one of your favorite books that you read maybe when you're 18 to 22 and you read it now, it might not have nearly the same effect. So I think when you read a book in the position that you're at in life very much matter in terms of the context of you learning. But for me, the first book that I really read in the financial world or financial category that struck a chord and made me change the way I think, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
It's crazy. That was mine as well.
It was a lot of people's for sure. I mean, I was in a fraternity in college. One person read it, and then literally within the next 2 weeks, the entire fraternity had read it. People were just like, bells going off in everyone's head. But if you had never read that book and you read it now, it would probably still influence you. But I think because of the age we were and where we were, it was the perfect book at that time. And I think that's why it's a great book for 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah, I think that is a 100% must read for everyone who first off hasn't read it yet, but definitely, I would say 16 to 24-year-olds, read it as soon as possible. The one thing that I remember from that book was thinking, I got all this great advice, but I cannot take action on this. I was like, it'd be great to have passive income or great to have real estate income, but that, there's no way I can get that.
Well, why did you think that?
I don't know if it was the mentality I had growing up where I just thought it was, poor me. I grew up, in this situation where I'm not going to have, I don't have money to invest, I'm not going to be able to do this. I actually even remember kind of looking up passive income, like different sources. And I remember reading through the list one by one, thinking, okay, is this something I can obtain? And I remember a few of them were things like book royalties or, like patent royalties, whatever it was. And at the time I thought, there's no way in a million years I would ever get any of this. And it's so insane looking at my income reports now every month and seeing, pretty much all of it is passive income, and some of it is book royalties.
and you know what it's not, at least not yet, is property, right?
Yeah. It's not even property
Which
yet.
And that was the book that really turned you on to it, but yet it's what you haven't implemented yet at this far. And it was the same for me. I never invested in property. I read that book when I was maybe 20. I didn't invest in property till I was like 29 or something, somewhere around then. But I think it's more of a way, whether it's actionable or not, when you read it, it changes the way that you view investing and building wealth.
I think the biggest lessons learned from it were buy assets, not liabilities, and how to think about money and think about business and think about all the things that you wish that your dad would have taught you that he just either didn't have time to or didn't know himself. The two things I would not recommend for the book is, number one is having your first investments being buying single family homes as rental income. I think if you are going to buy real estate, it should probably be multifamily homes, like maybe apartment units, or if you're going to buy commercial, real estate to lease out offices. I think that's the better idea, or even REITs, which you talked about in what episode was that?
We've talked about them in several episodes now.
Yeah, but like these are much better ways than going in and buying a single family house, especially if you've been watching like those renovation TV shows or like flipping houses. That's not something I would personally recommend. I think it's a lot more work than people think it's going to be, and all your eggs in one basket because you have one unit. So that one unit is empty, is vacant. You're 100% liable for that month's mortgage. Versus if you have 10 units, and one unit is empty, you're still 90% full.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And the great thing, if you invest in a REIT, you could invest as little as whatever. You could invest $500 or less. But let's say you invest $1,000. You're in college or you're just starting off. You can invest. You can buy the shares. If you want to and you're not comfortable, you can sell them the next day. It's just like a click of a button. And it gives you the feeling essentially of being a landlord where you're going to collect rent. Most of these REITs pay out dividends each quarter, so it's not like getting a monthly payout, but let's say you hold the REIT for 3 months or 6 months. It gives you the feeling of being a landlord where you're collecting rent, but without all the headaches. So it's a good way to start understanding real estate, understanding what assets are being held, how income's coming in, maybe what debt you have to pay off. You can look at all this through their financials and their operations without actually having any of the headaches that go along with owning an investment property.
Yep, 100% agree. And the second thing about Robert Kiyosaki, or the Rich Dad Poor Dad, is I don't know what he's been up to now, but I see like it almost looks like some kind of like multi-level marketing thing where his new Rich Dad Academy. I haven't been through it. Not something I would personally recommend.
I feel like it's been a slow slide since you wrote that book. You've been trying to continue the upward tick, but I would just stick with that book and let that book lead into other things. That's a great starting point for people, like we said, to change the way they think. And from that, I think you can get into a lot deeper reading, a lot more niche investing of real estate. That book will really just open your mind to wanting to improve yourself and your financial position.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the second book, but it was also written around the same time. It's called the Cashflow Quadrant. And that was a pretty good book too. It wasn't as interesting. It wasn't as exciting to read, but it gave me a lot of knowledge. And it was basically, are you an employee, a business owner, or whatever the other two were. And it kind of showed you the pros and cons of being in each category. So that was very helpful. But the most helpful thing that he's ever put out is actually his board game.
Did you actually play that board game?
Yeah. So the board game's called Cashflow 101. And I think there's an expansion called like Cashflow 202 or something. But what I did was I looked on meetup.com for cash flow groups. And I think this is a great idea for everyone to do in your own city. Go there and do not let anyone give you any advice. Play it as you would with your own money. So almost pretend, this is, you are actually buying real estate. Don't ask anyone any advice. Just go there and be prepared to be humbled because you're going to end up making a lot of mistakes. You're going to end up not understanding the accounting. You're going to probably mess up. You're probably going to lose money, which is the most valuable lesson you can learn.
That's great. And when I read the book, the game wasn't out yet, and everyone was searching, trying to figure out how to get their hands on it. And then I think by the time the craze had died down, the board game then came out. And by that point, we weren't even really talking about it or looking at it anymore. But from the book, they talk a little bit about the board game. It seemed like an amazing idea. I would almost say maybe like a much more modern, detailed version of Monopoly. Is that fair to say?
Yep. So imagine Monopoly, but you have an actual P&L statement, like a profit and loss statement, and you are doing accounting that it's probably as detailed or more detailed than my actual business. So I learned pretty much everything I know about keeping my expense reports and my profit and loss statements for my actual business, which was doing hundreds of thousands of dollars from playing that game.
And that's something. So when you talk about 18 to 24-year-olds, I think one of the most important things that you get into with trying to create wealth for the future and create a base of experience and knowledge for the future, one of the most important things you can do is, of course, educate yourself in as many ways as possible. And just while we're on the topic of books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was both number one for us. We just found out. Is there any other books for you that were really life-changing in that kind of era?
Unfortunately, I didn't read this other book until much later, where it didn't matter for me anymore because I've already learned those lessons, and I kind of got lucky, and I didn't waste my time with these things anyways. But one book I would recommend to everyone, especially if you guys have the idea of thinking, you want to buy, if anyone here thinks that they want to make $1 million and go out and buy a Ferrari, You should read this book. It's called, I think it's Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And in it, I listened to the audio
I haven't read it,
book version, and it was really long because it kind of just repeats itself over and over again. But I think it's very valuable for someone who's 18, 24, because I wasted so much money on buying crap. I mean, and by crap, I mean like luxury goods or, partying or, going out and drinking and, or fixing up my car. I think that was the biggest waste of time ever. But buying exhaust and rims, and for my car, he basically talks about, are you in the slow lane of financial success or the fast lane? And I think, and it's been so long, but basically he will convince you that you are a freaking idiot if you're wasting money buying crap.
Interesting. Okay, well that's a great one. We'll have to add to the reading list. And I would just say the one other book that I also read, unfortunately, recently instead of when I was much earlier, is The Richest Man of Babylon. Have you read that one?
It's on my reading list, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay, so that's super short book. I think it's only 160 pages, and they're short pages. They're big letters, 2-paragraph type things, and they're just fables from 5,000 years ago. They're extremely easy to understand. They are kind of generation transcending, right? They would have applied 3,000 years ago and they apply today. And it's a really intriguing way to read because it's written in this almost old English way of, of civilizations back in Rome and stuff. So I would highly recommend that. There's lessons that I bring up regularly on that in my calendar just to kind of chime in and put it on my radar to consider again. So definitely get to that one. I listened to it on audio and read it, and both equally as good. So highly recommend that book.
Okay, I like it. And I would say the other book that we've both mentioned in, I think, episode 1, is a book where it may not be the best book out there. I mean, there's a lot of people who, have pros and cons on it. A lot of people who argue that Tony Robbins, he himself doesn't know, he's not an expert in investing. But the reason why I liked it is because he doesn't really try to make himself out as an expert for investing. He, is kind of like us, where he's trying to gather information from experts and share, all the points of views, all the sides of it. I also have a feeling that a lot of, professional investors don't like him and don't like the book because, either they have a conflict of interest, or, Tony, they feel like Tony's pushing his own agenda with the program that he is recommending, which I believe he is. Or, for other reasons, right? But overall, that book contains so much valuable information from so many top-level experts. So if you read Money Master the Game, don't take everything, all his advice, especially, him recommending, was it Stronghold or the All Seasons portfolio? Don't, just take that to heart. And I think he almost kind of teases you throughout the books, kind of saying, I have this ultimate, no-lose situation, that I'm not going to reveal until the end of the book. So, keep reading. Ignore that part of it and just read it, and take the advice, as a big blanket overview of what finance and investing is.
Yeah, that's well said. 100% on my recommendation list. I just wonder if I read it when I was 20, how it would have appealed to me. I feel like there are some just kind of elementary principles in there for everybody. I'm not sure if I would have got as deep into the stock investing and taken that as far to heart as I have, because I just read that book last year, and it's a big book. So it takes a little bit of grunt work to get through it, but for sure it's a recommended reading for anyone, whether I guess you're 18 or 45. I recommended it to my dad after I read it, and he loved it as well. And some of the most famous hedge fund managers that I listen to have also recommended it. So that's a good boost of confidence right there.
I think you're right. And if looking back when I was 18, 24, I would not have finished the book. I might have picked it up. I might have skimmed through it. I might have skipped chapters. There's no way I would have actually finished the book because it didn't apply to me. I didn't have the money to invest anyways. So I wouldn't have thought, about the future thinking, oh, this is giving me a good foundation for the future. I just would have been like, this is too long, it's too boring. Because I barely got through it now. I mean, even though I was interested.
So pro tip for anyone who's 18, drink 2 Red Bulls and listen to it on 2 times speed.
Oh, God. So, so someone right now, they're 18 to 24, right? They don't have any money to invest. They haven't had a business yet. They haven't had an exit yet. They don't have the income to start investing. Let's talk about some of the things that you definitely should not invest in, and then some of the things that maybe you could start with. So for me, I wasted a lot of money listening to my sister, unfortunately, who was working for this company that was selling, I think like life insurance. It might have been annuities, to be honest. I actually don't even understand it till today. I just remember she worked for this company. And she they convinced, us, me, my mom, to go in and start putting money aside. And then they showed us these graphs that were like, if you put in $250 a month now, for the rest of your life, when you are 50, you're going to be a millionaire. And all these things actually did make sense on paper. But the reason why it was a waste of my money, and I wish I never would have done it, is there was no possible way I was going to continue putting $250 a month in throughout high school and throughout college. Especially because some months I didn't, a lot of times I didn't have income at all. So that was one downside. And the second downside was the withdrawal penalty was really big. So I ended up losing, I don't even know how much, but I ended up losing quite a bit of money withdrawing it early. I think if I had just left it in there, it probably would have been a good investment, because then, it's every investor's dream to start investing when they're like 15, right? Because you imagine if you're putting in $250 a month since you're 15 and you're growing it, that would have been great. But realistically, you're going to use that money for college. You're going to use that money to travel, or you're going to use that money to buy your first house.
Yeah, that's great advice. So how much money did you lose, Johnny?
It probably wasn't that much. I honestly, can't recall at all, but it was probably like I, put in a couple $1,000s, and then I ended up taking an early withdrawal penalty. And and till this day,
which really sets you back and hurts your confidence when you're that age, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I thought like, I just wasted my time. I think in retrospect, if I actually wanted to invest that money and I wanted to make gains from it, I think it's a very valuable lesson to put money aside in every month, especially if you are, working your first job and you're 15 or 16 and you have extra income. I think it's much better than just blowing it on something. So what do you think would have been like what was the first time you saved money? What was it in? And kind of what do you think is a good idea versus a bad idea?
Sure. So I always saved money through summer jobs, and whenever I was in high school, I was always working as a golf bag boy or at a restaurant after school. So I saved a little bit of money. By the time I got to college, I think I'd saved like $9,000 or something. And then while I was in college, I continued to work and save a little bit of money, not much. But I lost quite a bit of money in college against my dad's advice, because my dad also lost money in college, and it was through the stock market. And what I realized was you're just way too emotional to be investing in stocks in college as your first experience. And the difference in today's age and say 30 years ago is back then, it was very difficult to stay on top of stock prices every single day, right? There was no computer screens in front of you, no mobile apps. But now you open up your computer, like I open my phone, the first thing that comes on my phone is the stock market, right? Got that little app, I wake up, I look at the Dow Jones. I mean, it's much more of an emotional game now. So my dad, when I was only 10 years old, he gave me some Disney stock, but instead of him transferring me shares on E-Trade or some other investing platform, he gave me a piece of paper that said you own whatever 120 shares of Disney stock. And I still own that today because it's locked up in a safe. I don't see it on my screen. It's just hidden away, right? It's out of view, out of sight, out of mind. So in college, I opened up I think it was a Schwab account or a similar one, and I took my, say, $7,000. I invested $5,000 into stocks. I didn't go into funds. I didn't have the intel, I would say, or the knowledge to invest in, say, an index fund at that time. I just went in and bought a few different tech funds that. Remember, Kramer, the crazy guy on, what is it, CNBC, right?
Yeah. That. Oh God, don't listen to that.
That's when he was. Yeah, that's when he was becoming so popular, and people were loving him, and his show was like number one. So of course I go on. He's touting a new stock every day. It just happens to be a day that I turn on the TV. I'm like, okay, I'll buy that, that, and that. So then that's 2006. Then 2007, we know what happened. I got super emotional when the market started tanking, and I sold out, and I lost, I don't know, maybe 30%. I was in tech stocks, so tech stocks got hammered. So I ended up losing like 30%. I remember waking up one morning and just almost crying. You turn it on, it's all red. And then, you're in college, you're about to graduate, and you're like, what, this could be my lifeline for a couple months or a year or whatever. So yeah, you sell at the bottom. And I think, hindsight is 2020, of course, but it's very difficult to invest when you're in college or say 18 to 24 and to have your emotions detached from it. Of course, you're emotional at that age in general. And when you have just a little money and you're investing in stocks and you're losing 10% in dips and stuff, it can be very, very emotional. So I would give a lot of caution to anyone who's thinking about investing in market at that age, and especially if you're going to try to pick stocks.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was almost going to suggest, people, play with stocks on paper, so they can kind of learn about investing. But I think the downside of that would be if you happen to do well on paper, it might give you this false confidence that you can beat the stock market, and you start using real money and lose it. I think the only benefit is if you lose a ton of money, then maybe you'll think, okay, you know what, I should not invest in individual stocks. But at the same time, you might think, it wasn't real money anyways. So I'm going to follow your advice. I'm going to say that if you're 18, 24, emotionally, you're not ready to see these big swings, ups and downs with stocks. If you really wanted to invest money, you actually had the extra money to invest, I would say buy something like an index fund like VTI and make a rule where you write it on a piece of paper and say you're not allowed to sell it when it's down. You're never allowed to lose money.
Why don't we give an example of, say, $10,000? Let's say you're 18 to 24. You have very limited experience in investing. Where would you put if you have $10,000, you don't have to invest at all. What would you do with it, Johnny FD, going back 10 years?
So personally, I would have went out and bought a used sports car and tried to get as many girls as I could. But if I was gonna go back with the knowledge I have today, what I would do differently is I would put 3,000 of it into VTI. This is the total stock market index with Vanguard. So that's the minimum to open an account with them. I would put another, let's say, $3,000 into a separate account, like in my bank that I just can't touch. That the only purpose of it is to invest in more VTI stocks every month on the same day of the month. So, I would divide 3,000 by 12, which is probably like $250 or something, and basically buy $250 worth of shares of VTI every month for the next, basically indefinitely, because hopefully that I'll be earning income and that'll be growing as well. I would always keep a couple $1,000s on cash reserve, because that's the worst thing you can do is overinvest and buy too many investments that are, first off, either not liquid, or even if like a stock is liquid, you might lose money because of bad timing. So if you happen to need money to pay your tuition, and the stock market happens to be down, well, you're screwed. So you always want to have some kind of cash reserve.
Yeah, definitely.
Even growing up, even like when I was really young and I would get like birthday money or whatever it was, in my savings account, I would erase 3 zeros. I would assume that $1,000 was zero. In my mind, I told myself if I go under 1,000, that means I'm in debt. And that way, I always had a small buffer, because I what you never want to do is get in a situation where you are paying fees or being charged interest for money you don't have. So whatever that amount is, whether it's 1,000 or 4,000, just consider that amount zero.
Good conservative strategy. I would just say that I don't think the type of money that you're going to be investing, really anything under, say, like $20,000, again, going into a kind of a specific example of someone who's 18 to 24 and just starting out, I think the best thing you can do is invest in yourself. I don't think you'll ever get enough returns out of, say, buying index funds or making any type of loans or investments that will be more beneficial to you than investing in yourself. And what I mean by that is not necessarily going and starting a startup, but it is potentially traveling, potentially investing in a friend's business. It could be learning a second language. It could be working as an internship for a startup and not getting paid and living off of your money instead, but getting that experience. There's so many things that you can do when you're 18 to 24, just like reading these books that we recommended, that the impact on your life and your future wealth will be so dramatically benefited by taking these steps instead of, say, investing all of your money in bonds or stocks or Wealthfront or any of these other things that we talk about. I think the number one thing you should always think about is invest in yourself. And even if that's just going to networking events and wearing nice clothes and taking some potential mentors out to dinner or something, I think that's the number one way to get ahead. If you have spare cash, I would say, I agree with Johnny's take, is to, instead of investing in stocks, invest in index funds. But what you might want to consider doing is take a little bit of money and put it into an index fund, and take a little bit of money and put it into a bond fund. And don't expect to make a lot of money out of each of these. Do it for the experience. Watch how they perform. Understand what it's like to, on your index fund, which is going to be mostly looking to get capital gains by the increase of profits in the companies that it holds. And then the bonds, which are much more dividend yielding. So look at what it's like on a monthly basis. The bonds are going to give you a little bit more money back in cash. And the index fund of stocks, you're going to hope that makes those companies grow and make capital appreciation. So having those two kind of side by side as apples to apples comparisons will give you a much better understanding of the stock market as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that advice a lot. What were some big wastes of either time or money when you're, around that age that you would do differently or advise differently? To be
completely honest, I'm very happy with how things turned out in my I would say my college and post-college years, because I didn't waste time. I was very aggressive. I wasn't settling for any type of, say, company job or comfort. I was starting my own startups. I was working with startups. I was investing. I was losing money in the stock market for a lot of that time, but I was very aggressively pursuing better things. So there's not a lot I would do differently. There's not a lot of money I wasted because I was living with my parents and living on a shoestring.
Well, you know what? I mean, if anything, that's good because you are super successful today, and it kind of shows the path that you took worked, well for you, and so it could work well for others. I am not as successful, and I think some of the reasons for that is because I wasted a lot of time between. So at 18, I went to a community college. Just with the sole intention of meeting up with friends so we can go out and hang out afterwards. We can go try to meet girls, at the mall or something. And it was just a big waste of time, not caring about school, but going anyways. Not thinking about like the future, just, kind of getting jobs because I thought that's what I had to do. So, I would take internships that I learned nothing from, just so I can have it on my resume. And I worried so much about building up this freaking resume. And you know what? I don't use it today. Like I would burn. Yeah. I'm never going to submit a resume anywhere again. I don't even have a LinkedIn because it reminds me of having a freaking resume. And there's no one in the corporate world I want to impress. I don't care.
I like it. I like it. But this is very much the era that you're, say, 4 years older than me. No one was doing startups when I was in college, which means no one was really doing startups when you were in college, right?
That's correct. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I think, you know what? I remember when I was in college, it just started. And I happened to be living in San Francisco, and I was into computers because I liked playing video games. I liked chatting on AOL. I liked, all those, all the tech stuff. And I actually was kind of like helping as tech support during my internship because everyone else at this, it was actually a property management firm in San Francisco. They were, in their 50s, and they were terrible with computers. So I was almost kind of like their in-house tech support, even though I was just this kid that didn't know much. And I would always be on the phone with the actual tech support for the company, kind of troubleshooting problems. And I know 100% that I could have just gotten a job, as, maybe not in a startup environment, but at least something to do with tech, something to do with computers, even if it was just tech support, instead of going to college. And I think there's a very, very good chance that would have led to me working at a startup because I was already in San Francisco. And, who knows? Like, who knows what big company I could have been working for, or who knows what company I could have been a kind of initial founder for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to see. Oh, of course, hindsight's 2020. That time, I think when we went to college was more difficult. If I was in college now, and I guess this would just be advice for anyone that's in college or out of college, and there's really no age limit on it. We have an intern right now that's 26 years old. He just got out of the military. He's looking at doing either corporate work and before he accepted a job he wanted to see what startup scene's like. So he's doing a 6-week internship. So these don't have to be super long commitments. They can be, I know there's people in Singapore that they have this thing called externships. And it's literally 1-week internships where you go in, you do a bunch of dirty work for a startup, but you get to see the inside operations of what working in a startup's like. And I would say that is probably one of the most valuable things that anyone can do. It doesn't matter if you're 30 or if you're 18 or even younger, to get experience and see what a fast-paced startup environment is going to pay huge dividends to you in the future.
And not even just the experience, but the connections that you're going to make, meeting people at that internship, the externship. Because if you kick ass or you have good, you have a personality that people kind of get along with, they're going to want to mentor you. They're going to want to introduce you to someone else. And that's invaluable.
Yeah, definitely. And with an internship comes mentorship a lot of times. And I know both you and I, Johnny, both owe a lot of our success to mentors, right?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, and you can call mentors whatever you want. It can be a friend or someone that was your old boss that you might not even had a good relationship with, but taught you a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that mentors actually come into your life without actually being labeled a mentor. But definitely the easiest and most efficient way to get rich in today's world is the same as it was 5,000 years ago, which is become an apprentice, get a mentor, right? Back in the day, if you wanted to learn a craft like, sword welding or gold lending, you got a mentor and you became an apprentice and you worked for them and they taught you the skill and then you mastered it. And today it's very much the same. You got to get a mentor, and often, Johnny, I'm not sure exactly how you got one, but a lot of times that just means going and busting your ass for someone for free, just to learn the trade, right?
Yeah, I would say that is one of the best ways to do it. Is to either get an internship or just offer to work for free, or or just give value. The way I did it was actually a little bit different. Both my mentors, I got them through providing them value in things that they were not good at. So either one, the first guy was literally just because I was way better at socializing and picking up girls, he, wanted to hang out. And it was a great time because he was this millionaire guy that, just was so busy working all the time and never really developed those social skills to go up and chat up and go at a bar, that he wanted to hang out with me because I had those skills. So that actually is a big reason why I was able to kind of get that mentorship, is because even though he was way better at money and finance, I was way better at having fun and going out and being social. With Anton, my other mentor, it was because I had the experience of Thailand and travel and, even putting together events and, things like that really had nothing to directly do with business per se, but it was like he, was very successful with his dropshipping stores and his business, but he had just started traveling. He knew nothing about where to train, at a gym, in Thailand. He didn't know where to travel to. He didn't know where to go have fun, basically. And that was me becoming his friend and kind of providing that value. And in return, we would hang out, and whenever I would have a question about like my e-commerce store, he'd be able to offer his value back.
I like it. And that just goes to show there's so many different ways that you can offer and add value to somebody's life and profession without being specifically skilled in that actual profession, right? And it'd be a fantastic thing to have someone come up to you and say, hey, Johnny, I know you're a busy guy. I am going to come to Chiang Mai, and all I want to do is do your laundry, make sure that you have food on your table, and we're going to go do Muay Thai together whenever you want, and I'll do X, Y, and Z for you. The only thing I ask is just share a little bit of your experience with me because I'm hungry and I want to get off to the right start, right?
So that definitely makes sense. I would advise do not write that in an email because it just sounds creepy.
It sounds creepy, right?
So if you really wanted to do that, what I would suggest you do is move to Thailand anyways, start training, at a Muay Thai gym anyways, and then meet me kind of organically either through the gym itself or at a co-working space, whatever it is, and then kind of offer, I wouldn't say like, okay, I'm sure there's some people out there that would take someone's like, slave labor and do their laundry. I'm not that person. I probably wouldn't even advise you to want to be associated with somebody who would do that, because then I almost feel like they wouldn't appreciate you or respect you as much if you're just doing like laundry. But I think things that they would be really good at would be like if somebody was kind of in person and they were like, hey, do you need help organize this event, or do you need help setting up the next coffee talk, or stuff like that, like things that are actually kind of more useful and don't feel as like degrading.
Yeah, I like it. And basically, if you're hungry, there's always ways to present value to someone and to get in. And just going back to how I got started, I mean, I basically I started a website and I sold it to a guy. So that's already a big jump. It's not something that's exactly quick and easy to do, but just to make it a little bit more simple, then I ended up going and working for him at his business, doing very low level marketing. And I was the guy. They were hiring all these PhDs and MBAs from like Duke and Columbia for this business. All these people were way, way smarter than me. They all had a lot more value on paper than me. But what I was willing to do was just work my tail off, right? So I'm the guy that was there getting into work every day at 8 o'clock and staying literally till 9 o'clock every night, where all these MBAs and PhDs were going home at, counting the clock and going home at 5:15. I'm offering to go shop for food for the office, pick up supplies, do anything, drop these guys' kids off, pick them up from school, whatever it took. And so they saw that hunger and they started giving me more and more responsibility and sharing their knowledge with me. That led into additional things down the road, and eventually them offering for me to run their next startup, which we all collaborated on, and then they made me equal partners on something that I didn't have to put any money into. So I think when you show loyalty to people, you're good to people, you add value to their lives. But as much importance as it is to add value, be a good person and show how bad you want to succeed, in not a creepy way by emailing like, I'll do your dirty laundry, like Johnny said. But, do it professionally. And people that are successful, especially people that are successful that have had people help them become successful, like Johnny and I, we want to help people, right? You want to be a mentor in the future. You want to see people that remind us of ourselves previously. We want to see those people succeed. And there's millions of people around the world that are successful and in that position. So I would just echo, the easiest way to get rich is to find a mentor, and that leads into a lot of things. That leads into you working for their business and getting stock, running a business for them, them teaching you a skill that can make you independently wealthy. So there's a lot of things that can spin off from that.
And we can do an entire episode on how to find a mentor or how to on that topic, because there's so much more to say. If you guys are interested in more about finding a mentor or the kind of the process, leave a comment in this episode and let us know, and we can definitely do an entire talk on that. But let's get back to 1824. You went to college. I went to college. Do you regret it? Did you learn anything from it?
I don't regret it because I had a very unique college experience. I'll just say in short that my freshman fall, which is my first semester, my freshman year, I got arrested 4 times. And it was stupid stuff. It was underage drinking, criminal mischief for breaking a window, and fake ID. But what happened was I knew I was not a bad person, but the whole justice system and the academic system made you want to believe that you're just this piece of crap that needed to drop out. And it put me in this extremely defensive, prove it to the world type of position. And the other thing that happened, along with changing my mentality of how I looked at the world and myself, was my dean said, at the time I was a criminal mischief major, sounds like it. I was a criminology major, which means I was trying to work for the government. I wanted to be an FBI or CIA or Secret Service of some sort. And my dean basically goes, you're never going to get a job with the government as long as you live when you have 4 arrests on your record. So I go, what do I do? She goes, drop out and become a business major. I'm like, all right. So I did that. And because of all the trouble I was on an academic level, I had to face the fact that I probably was never going to get a job at a business if they ever did a background check. So it started putting me into almost a forced entrepreneur mindset where I could no longer go out and drink. I couldn't go out and party. I could barely drink behind closed doors without really being stressed and worried. So I literally had to focus and channel all of my energy into self-progress, which is almost the exact time I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and started getting into student government and starting to think about how I can create a business that will sustain and my profession after I get out of college. So in that sense, it was very good. What I learned in school on an academic level would have been a total waste of time if I had committed 4 years to that and not done these other things.
I like that, man. And it really kind of shows the different mentality that you took, because a lot of people would have taken kind of like the poor me or, F the system, and then said, well, you know what, if I'm going to be, if I'm going to get arrested for these stupid things, I might as well rob a bank or rob a liquor store or something. So I think that, you took the way better path of saying, let me use this as motivation to be a successful entrepreneur and not let me just give up on life.
I think looking back, that's how it worked out. And I'm glad that I had the resolve to be able to take that path, because it was a very emotional time that a lot of things could have gone wrong if I hadn't made the right choices. So I'm very fortunate that I did. And I know some people don't, and a lot of people don't, but if you can use that to channel energy in the right direction, it can lead to very good things and good experiences in your life. How about your college?
It was pretty much a complete waste of time. The only reason why it was beneficial is because it forced me to move out of my parents' house, and I moved from San Francisco down to Orange County, which is only, it's in the same state, right? So it's not that big of a move, especially now, considering the fact that you are in Singapore? I am in Berlin, Germany. And tomorrow morning, I am taking a train to Warsaw, Poland. Right? So I'm moving more during this,
I love it.
During this upload of this podcast than I did going, from my parents' house to Irvine, California, the safest city in the US. But it was such a big move. It was so scary for me. And I kind of owe it to the college experience of forcing me to live on my own and kind of develop those skills. As far as what I learned in school, it was a complete waste of time. I remember taking a marketing class and learning the stupidest things that you never use in an actual business. It's
so bad. The whole schooling system is so backwards. When I look back to my education and I was taking marketing classes like you, it was just so out of date. It's like how to run an advertisement on a billboard, and we're in 2007, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what would you recommend then? If someone is 17 and they're thinking, do they want to go to college or not? What would you recommend?
I only really, when it comes to the core of this episode and our absolute advice, and this could be saying go to college, don't go to college, I would say I only have one bit of advice, one line of advice for anybody in that age group, and that is get involved in a startup. And it doesn't mean go to school or don't go to school. It can be internship for a startup on the side, start a project, start a website, start a drop shipping business. Just get involved in a startup, because the future and the whole global economy is moving to small business from these corporate dinosaurs. So I think no matter what you do, go to school or don't go to school, figure out a way to get involved in a startup.
I like that advice a lot. So, and I like how when you say startup, you don't just mean like, a tech startup. You mean start a business either on your own or with, or join a team. And I would say on top of that, I would add bootstrap your first business. Don't go in and borrow money from friends or family. Don't dip into your savings too much. Start your first business for $500 or less and learn from that. Because you're gonna make mistakes, and at this age, you have what a lot of people don't have when they get in their 30s. You have that hustle, you have that grit, and say, you know what, I don't need to sleep. I got rock stars.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the energy for it. You have the ability to bounce back at that age. And even if you don't take the risk and the financial risk yourself in starting something, and like Johnny said, it can be as simple as starting a blog or a website for $200 and operating it and understanding how e-commerce and websites operate. You can always get involved in one. Everyone knows someone who's starting a business. Everyone, at any college campus you go to now has several startups. Go there and intern after your classes, get involved for 8 weeks, do something for them, learn how it operates, make some connections and network.
And who knows, maybe that company, like the one Sam got involved with, we might sell for $100 million. So there's no reason not to do it.
On that point too, it's worth noting that we never created an employee pool for our employees, which I wish we had. But on the day that we sold, we just decided, you know what, we're going to take 2% of the sale and give it to our employees, right? So all of these employees who had been working for us for 2-3 years in this exciting startup environment, they didn't even know they owned equity, and they didn't. But when we sold the company, we just decided to rip off 2% and give everyone cash outs. So everyone made more than the majority of people made more than their 1 year salary right there in a day, which for most of these people was like, okay, this is a down payment for a house. This is money to go start my own business. It's life-changing money.
That's incredible. So 2% is $2 million. You just gave that away just because you guys were being generous.
Right. And I wish we had given people stock earlier in the process because it would have made them more loyal to the company. But, there's a lot of people that look at the the story behind the McDonald's secretary. When McDonald's was started, they gave us a secretary. They didn't have enough money to pay a secretary, so they gave her a little bit of stock. Some 45 years later, she's like one of the richest people in Florida. She owns this massive mansion in Palm Beach Islands, like a $40 million home. It's incredible. And this was kind of before the time of startups, right? But now it's never been easier to start a business. It's never been easier to get involved in a small business that could make you rich, even with micro shares of stock.
Yeah, it's really, really great advice. And I'm so glad you're on the show because you have come from that background. That's advice I never would have even thought about. And that's advice I wish someone would have gave me when I was starting out. I would say, as far as college, what I would recommend to people is if you know exactly what you want to do and it requires a college degree to do it. For example, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, or maybe even like an engineer, then go to college with that knowing what you want to do and crush it, do really well with it. Still, I would probably start something on the side or either business or internship, maybe something to kind of do with what you're going to do anyways. And I would just go full forward. But if you're like me, where you're only going to college just to go because you think you need it for your resume, even though you don't even know what job you want. If you're lost and you're just like, this is what I should do. Stop wasting your time. Take that money, take that time, and figure out what you want to do. Either by starting a business, or maybe volunteering somewhere, or I would say travel. But what I'm afraid of is if I tell someone that's 18, like, oh yeah, you should go travel Thailand for a while, they're going to end up at the full moon party just drinking buckets all the time.
That's very true. That's a tricky one because we don't come from a culture where you're supposed to go travel after college, whereas like Aussies and New Zealand and most of Europe, they want to go travel either in college or after college. And I don't have advice on that because I know how important travel is, but we have done it at a later age once we've got kind of our grounding and I would say our motivation in place. I'm not sure how it would affect us if we were, if we were 22 and taking a year off and go travel. It could make you more worldly, or it could have an adverse effect on you and just turn you into a beach bum, which is fine. But if you want to build wealth, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say if you want to travel, I would do it with a purpose and not fall into just, bounce around hostels, living as cheap as possible, drinking beer every night. I would do something. So for example, I would go and become a dive master and work, at a scuba diving resort for 6 months. Enjoy the crap out of it. You'll still have fun. You still end up partying on the beach every night, but at least you're kind of getting something from it. You're gonna earn a bit of money, or at least be able to live for free. You can see some of the world. You can experience some really amazing things. Or I would, let's say you want to volunteer in Nepal or something, kind of rebuilding, after the earthquake, and you're part of a system where there's other people kind of also doing something. Then I would say, yeah, 100% travel would be a good option. But financially, if you want to build wealth and you want to kind of have money to invest, those are not good ways to spend your time. I would say you should join a startup, or you should start a business. Yeah,
definitely. I met some guys here in Singapore that they're going to school in the US and they're doing 3-month internships abroad, and they were able to figure that out through their school. I guess startups are posting to these big universities, job boards. We have all these internships available. So that's probably more of a modern, recent opportunity that some of these schools are tapping into. So that's another thing people can look to do is do an internship abroad with a startup in a city like Singapore or Hong Kong, Shanghai, that has a big business scene that will give you more of a future benefit than going and hanging out on a beach in Thailand.
I like that. Also, on that note, I would say ignore what you're supposed to do. So if you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to, get internships, and you're supposed to, kind of fill in your resume or your CV, just ignore that advice. There's in this day and age, there's nothing you're supposed to do. Like you can be successful doing anything that adds value in the world. This is the first time in the history of mankind where if you just love playing video games and you just want to play video games all day, you can be very successful being being a full-time gamer. You can, if you want to make stupid videos and post them on YouTube, you can be very rich doing that. I mean, it's pretty much anything nowadays. If you're going to do it and you're passionate enough where this is what you genuinely want to do every day, all day, do it, but figure out a way to monetize it, to build an audience, so you can do it publicly and then have that be a business.
And don't waste time. That's another thing. Just don't waste time, because the earlier you get started and go hard, the more success you're going to have.
Yeah. I remember when I was like 16, I started going to raves, these underground parties. And I remember thinking like, oh man, like how easy would it be for me to throw my own rave? And I thought, no, this is stupid. Like this is a waste of time. I need to go to college and just, get a corporate job. Meanwhile, in that same time frame, people that I used to probably party with and hang out with, they're like, oh, well, why not become a DJ? Or why not throw these events myself? And now there are these like multi-million-dollar festivals being thrown like every other weekend in the summer. And most of these guys are just like people like me that, had this passion, really enjoyed electronic music, really enjoyed dancing, really enjoyed partying, and they just wanted to do it full time.
So true, man. And I took a walk down the river in Singapore the other night, and I was thinking that it's never been easier to start a business. It's never been easier to get rich quick. And I'm looking at all the people just kind of like having picnics on the sidewalk, and it's like Tuesday afternoon at 5:00. They just left the office and they're sitting there. And there's an option in life now where you can live a comfortable life and not work that much, or you have the opportunity, and it's never been easier to make something really special out of your life. But you, like we said, you can't waste time and you got to go hard. And it's just a balance of, if you're willing to put in the time and work those long hours and focus every day on growing and new opportunities, you're going to get there. It might not be a straight road, but you're going to get there. But if you want to work, 9 to 5 and be out of the office at 5:00 and having a picnic down by the riverside every day, it's just, there's too many people that are going a lot harder than you, that are working while you're sleeping, working while you're taking time off. So it's just a personal decision of what you want to do. and how far you want to go. But it's never been easier to get ahead if you want to.
I love that advice. So everyone listening, thanks so much for being subscribed to the podcast. If you guys listening on Travel Like a Boss and you haven't listened to both podcasts, check out investlikeaboss.com. If you go to the show notes of episode 11, this is going to be where we're going to put all the links to everything we talked about, all the books we talked about. If you guys want to enter to win a $25 gift card for doing us a big favor and leaving a review of the podcast, just go to investlikeaboss.com and click on bonus, and you can get all the details there. So do you think we're ready to give away another gift card for the week?
I'm always excited for this.
Okay. So, what about Brian Kwan from New York City? Brian says, been a fan of Johnny for years. This podcast is teaching me so much, and I've always wanted to learn about investing, yet never knew where to look for honest advice. While Johnny and Sam aren't finance professionals, they share their experience and thoughts on what the best options are for successful entrepreneurs. There's no hidden agenda or aim for profit like many others out there. They bring on professionals to guest speak, offering insight into specific niches that never would have come across or considered options for someone like myself. It's crazy that this type of information about investing is barely taught in public schools. Thanks to this podcast, along with the other content of his Travel Like a Boss podcast, I'm learning so much applying this knowledge for my art career. I think everyone can benefit from what is to be learned from these podcasts, no matter what niche or walk of life you come from. Thanks, Johnny and Sam. Keep up great work. Much love from NYC.
All right, NYC. And I'd like to thank Brian for doing our weekly disclaimer and saying that we're not financial advisors.
I love it. So everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you all next week. Peace.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Join our mailing list at investlikeaboss.com to get exclusive access to our insider investment portfolios and our private members forum.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends and leave us a review in the iTunes store. It helps more than you know. See you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.